Welcome to Midnight Casebook, where every shadow hides a secret and every mystery begs to be solved. Tonight, we unravel the chilling tale of Father Brown and the cross that hung sideways, a fan-made story paying homage to the brilliance of G.K. Chesterton's legendary detective. We'd love to have you along for this enigmatic journey. Drop a comment to let us know where you're watching from, share your theories, and if you spot any inconsistencies, don't hesitate to call them out. Your keen eyes and sharp minds help us craft even more captivating mysteries in the future. Chapter 1. The Guest Who Never Took Tea. The scream that shattered the stillness of Hemlock Ridge rang through the village like a gunshot, sending crows spiraling into the bruised grey sky as Father Brown stepped into the dimly lit hallway of the Blackwood estate, drawn as if by some unerring instinct to the source of commotion. It was no housekeeper's wail, but the sound of genuine terror, a note of despair that echoed in the heavy, rain-laden air. The flickering candle in the vestibule cast chaotic shadows that danced across ancestral portraits, their hollow eyes witnessing the unraveling of life itself. With each step, the smell of wet earth mixed with something iron-tinged, the unmistakable scent of spilled blood wafting through the air. At the end of the ornate hallway, Lady Aveline Blackwood lay sprawled on the carpet, a pool of crimson spreading beneath her like a grotesque bloom. A wine glass had rolled away, its contents spilled like her life. The masterful masterpiece of an intricate crystal design lay shattered and surreal beside her. The scattering of petals from the garden's last surviving roses dusted the scene, their beauty now a macabre juxtaposition to the violence here. Father Brown's keen gaze swept over the chaos. Only a moment before, Lady Blackwood had been perfectly alive, discussing plans for her afternoon tea with her crumbling estate as a backdrop. Yet here she was, lifeless and surrounded by abject silence. The housemaid, a slender girl named Clara, stood nearby, trembling on the edge of hysteria, her apron stained with the remnants of her mistress's spilled drink and the unmistakable hint of unmeasured guilt swirling in the air around them. I only turned away for a moment, she stammered, the tremor in her voice heavy with dread. She was speaking to Mr. Fenton. He came to visit, and then I heard her scream, and I ran in. Mr. Fenton, Father Brown echoed, his brow furrowing as he edged closer, pieces of Clara's frantic confession settling like ashes around the edges of his mind. The newly arrived guest? Yes, he arrived just yesterday. A distant cousin, or so he says. Though I'd never seen him before, he frightens me. As if summoned by nature's own cruel design, a rumble of thunder rolled through the rafters of the Blackwood estate at that moment, an ominous reminder of the storm brewing outside. Father Brown's attention shifted to the door that led to the adjacent drawing room, its frame aflame with the flickering light cast from within, each shadow a reminder of the secrets these walls harbored. He turned back to Clara, whose wide eyes brimmed with fear, and murmured, "And what do you know of this guest, Clara?" He's polite and stylish. Too stylish for this house, really," she panted, as if her words were barely struggling past a choking fear. "But he spends a lot of time out in the gardens. I've heard him talking to someone or something, like he's waiting for someone to show up." "Interesting," Father Brown noted her distraught expression, teetering between dread and desperation. "Where is Mr. Fenton now?" "The drawing room," Clara whimpered. "When I ran, he was just standing there, staring at Lady Blackwood." With a nod, Father Brown left her trembling at the scene, a solitary figure against the dark backdrop of tragedy, and moved briskly toward the door. The atmosphere grew heavier as he crossed the threshold, and what awaited him beyond was nothing but the perfumed haze of grandeur, disproportionately at odds with the gruesome reality just beyond this elegant facade. In the drawing-room, Fenton appeared lost in thought by the fireplace, its flickering flames reflecting the unease of the gathering dusk. When Father Brown cleared his throat, Fenton's head snapped up, and for the briefest moment, his expression twisted in palpable panic that quickly morphed back into an air of sardonic detachment. "You came to offer your condolences, Father Brown," he intoned, an ironic lilt in his voice, as though the spectre of death were a mere distant acquaintance, unworthy of deeper reflection. "Condolences are best left for the living, Mr. Fenton. It's the truth I seek," answered Father Brown steadily, and he noted the slight tightening of Fenton's jaw at the mention of truth. "Pray tell, what on earth were you discussing with Lady Blackwood before she met her untimely end?" Fenton hesitated, as if weighing the worth of sharing whatever secrets danced on his tongue. "Nothing of consequence, merely a discussion of plans for her estate," he replied, yet the nervous glint in his eye betrayed him. "She asked about my father's estate in Kent. Perhaps she felt a longing for her own estate, with its deteriorating splendor." "Splendor indeed, but perhaps you should concern yourself with ensuring it does not wither away completely." Father Brown intercepted this deflection with a raised eyebrow. "Do you often visit distant relatives with whom you share so little communication?" Fenton paced momentarily, gathering momentum for a retort. "Why not? This family is wealthy in history, if not in funds. Surely they cannot ignore a distant cousin for too long." "And were you aware of the missing silver tea set, one of her prized possessions, before you arrived?" Father Brown interjected sharply. Fenton's color shifted, the confidence evaporating from his stance as he paled ever so slightly. No, I arrived only yesterday. My invitations were unsolicited. Perhaps you should look to the maid for your explanations." "Ah, yes," Father Brown replied, a smile creeping into the corners of his mouth. "The maid? A simple accomplice? Or a player in a greater game? It seems even the thinnest veneer of civility cannot protect the black woods of human nature. Then again, can you hear them? The distant timbre of folly calling us all into its grasp." Yet the clock ticked ominously, the seconds lingering like an unwelcome guest, and before Fenton could muster a reply, the door flew open to reveal a servant, breathless and ashen. "Father Brown, come quickly. It's Clara. She's—" A thunderous clap of lightning struck just outside, and the power flickered, plunging the room into shadow, the candlelight succumbing to darkness. And in that moment, amidst the screams rising to a fever pitch, the assurances of a hidden truth flared dangerously bright, as if blown from the recesses of the darkness. Father Brown felt a swell of realization rising within him, an omen of the secrets yet to be unveiled. But as he turned, the last flickers of light faded, and in the shadows, a figure loomed. A gunshot cracked through the night, and the world around Father Brown exploded in chaos. Chapter 2. A Confession. Too convenient. The room plunged into chaos as the gunshot rang out, the sharp report reverberating through the drawing room, echoing into the very marrow of Father Brown's bones. The flickering flame of the hearth cast frantic shadows, contorting faces into grotesque masks within the engulfing darkness. With instincts honed by years of unraveling mystery, Father Brown executed a rapid pivot, the air charged with the pungent scent of fear and adrenaline. "Clara!" His shout was swallowed by the storm protesting violently outside, merging human confusion with nature's ire. The drawing-room door swung open, revealing Clara's figure, frail and trembling, her once pristine apron now smeared with a fresh stain. This time something dark and liquid that gleamed ominously in the dim light. "Father!" It was Fenton," she gasped, words spilling from her trembling lips like desperate prayers. He threatened her. I saw." Father Brown felt the room constrict, as if the very air held its breath. Clara's eyes, once alight with terror, now flickered with something darker, a resolve he could not quite decipher. "You can't trust him, Father. He knows too much." "Knows too much, you say?" Father Brown mused aloud, stepping cautiously towards her, gaze fixed on her face, scanning for sincerity hidden beneath the panic that clung to her like damp clothing. And what might he know that could provoke such ire? His voice was low, measured, almost conspiratorial. I don't know, but he spoke of the ivories," she stammered, a puzzled crinkle forming between her brow as she hesitated. "And Lady Blackwood, she mentioned something just before it happened, something about the estate, about a curse." The implication of her words sent a shiver down Father Brown's spine. The ivories, the whispered name of an old family secret, said to still haunt the descendants of the Blackwood line. A painted portrait of blood and betrayal. They were rumored to have hidden something terrible, something that lingered like a ghost in the shadows of the estate. "Curse, you say?" Father Brown's eyes gleamed with a clarity that pierced the haze of confusion surrounding them. "And who else was privy to this discussion? Did you overhear anyone else present?" "It was only the three of us, Lady Blackwood, Mr. Fenton, and I." Clara's voice faltered as realization struck her. But no, there was someone else, a figure, lurking outside the window, watching. Father Brown's heart raced. With instincts sharpened and foreboding hats of realization tightening against the violent backdrop of the storm outside, he pressed. "And when was it you noticed this figure?" Before she screamed, Clara's voice rang clear, each syllable a shattering glass. "I thought it was just a trick of the light, a shadow in the rain." "Indeed, Clara," he said, his gaze unflinching as it pierced into her trembling form. "What you saw may be pivotal, but tell me, why did you not mention this before?" Her eyes darted, caught in the web of her own hesitation, then hardened, a sudden spark igniting. "I was scared. I thought you would not believe me." "Fear deceives us all," he interjected, sensing an undercurrent of deliberate avoidance in her confession. "You must speak freely here, for Lady Blackwood cannot." The door creaked open again, and Mr. Fenton reappeared, his demeanor unchanged, a cloak of calm draped over him like a second skin. The flickering candlelight reflected off the sweat-beaded brow, framing his face in shadow. "What's happening?" he demanded, sweeping the room with a glance that revealed nothing but the mounting tension scattered among the witnesses. "I heard a shot. Was it Clara?" Fenton's words threaded through the air like a knife in the light, slicing through uncertainty. "You deny your involvement?" Father Brown challenged him, stepping forward, confident yet wary, as though he were tinkering at the edge of something wet and wild. "I involved in a matter of gunshots and accusations?" Fenton scoffed, eyebrows arching in a mockery of disbelief. "Surely, Father, you jest. I have only arrived to clarify this ghastly series of events." The smirk that danced across his lips turned dark, a predator's smile woven into a facade of sophistication. Or perhaps you wish to direct the blame elsewhere. You're remarkably quick to dispute suspicion, Mr. Fenton. Father Brown's eyes remained steadied on him, observing the slight quiver in his fingers as he adjusted his cufflinks, the only sign of nerves betraying the man's bravado. "Enough!" Clara shrieked, panic rising from her core as the atmosphere thickened around them. "He's lying. I don't know what it means. I just wish I had stayed. I could have saved her." With turbulence crackling in the air, Father Brown took a deep breath, attempting to bring clarity to the maelstrom. "Tell me, Clara, what did Lady Blackwood think of you? Did you ever—" Before he could finish, he was interrupted by an unexpected sound, the creaking of the heavy oak door, followed by the unmistakable rush of footsteps. The room stiffened, hearts racing, as a stranger emerged through the growing shadows, hair plastered against a pale face, breathless with the urgency of his intrusion. "Father Brown, you must listen. There's been—" But he didn't finish. Instead, a fleeting shadow passed behind him. The figure from Clara's haunting confessions, standing just beyond the threshold, cloaked in storm and malice, stepped into the flicker of light. Masked features illuminated just a moment too late, a sharpened machete gleaming in its hand, a menacing promise of violence unfulfilled. Father Brown raised an arm, and the room held its breath, thickening with horror, secrets begging to be unearthed. "Who are you?" He stared into the figure's blank mask, feeling a rising dread bundle within him. "What have you come to claim?" But before the figure could answer, a flash of lightning illuminated the room with a blinding flare, transforming the world into a monochrome tableau, the storm, the lithe shadow, and within that instant, within the dreadful silence, Father Brown made his move. Only for the unthinkable to happen, a blinding scream erupted, shattering any thought but the clamor of chaos that followed. A shot rang out again, the world convulsing, a single scream piercing through, and just as darkness smothered the candlelight once more, Father Brown understood. In the shadows of Hemlock Ridge, a deadly game was afoot, and the next move could tear the very fabric of truth asunder. Chapter 3. The Letter That Arrived Too Late. The room shuddered as an anguished scream pierced the air, snapping Father Brown from the depths of disarray that enveloped him. The candle flames danced wildly, their flickering reflections creating grotesque shapes against the walls, while the embers of the hearth sputtered defiantly against the rising chaos. A storm raged outside, rain lashing against the windows like 1,000 tiny hands clawing for entry, and as the shadows cavorted about the room, anxiety clawed at Father Brown's gut. "Clara," he implored, knowing the weight of their recent conversation hung like a spectre between them. But the trembling maid stood taut, her face a mask of terror and confusion, mouth agape as she pointed a shaking finger toward the door through which Fenton had vanished. "Father, it's all gone wrong," she cried, straining against the palpable tension that crackled in the air. "I don't know what I saw, but it felt wrong. Something is wrong with all of this." Before Father Brown could respond, a sudden, forceful knock echoed against the oak door, as if the world itself sought to intervene. The sound jolted through the room, and there was something urgent, almost desperate in that rap. Clara recoiled, glancing nervously toward the trembling door, as if it were a portal to unspeakable horrors, and it was Father Brown's resolve that urged him forward. Stepping toward the door, he steadied his breath, praying for clarity where chaos reigned. "Stay back," he whispered, sensing a foreboding that settled around him like a shroud. With a firm pull, he swung the door wide. The figure beyond was familiar, yet unexpected. A young postman, rain-soaked and wide-eyed, clutched a letter in his trembling hands. An ordinary envelope, but it bore an air of portent. "I was given this," he gasped, panting, as if he'd run a marathon through the storm. "It arrived too late. It was labeled urgent, but I only found it minutes ago. I thought it might help." Father Brown's heart raced as he snatched the letter, the paper slick with rain, yet its urgency nestled within his grasp. A quick glance showed the name scrawled in fine letters across the top: Lady Blackwood. Kneeling before the flickering light of a candle, he unfolded it carefully, each crease whispering secrets long buried. The ink was fresh, the writing elegant, yet tremulous, much like the events that had unfurled that eve. "My dearest Clara," it began, startling him momentarily as he recalled her earlier fear. "If this letter finds you, please hold fast to the truth. The ivories are a curse not bound by time, and you must—" The door swung shut mid-gesture as Clara stumbled forward, curious and alarmed. "What does it say? Does it speak of the curse?" she implored, as Father Brown's eyes raced across the scrawled words, seeking meaning. "Yes," he whispered, more to himself than to her. "The ivories, an entrapment of guilt and betrayal," before continuing to read. "You must keep the truth away from Fenton. He seeks that which is not his own, bound by greed and a thirst for power. Trust none." The blood rushed from his face as he absorbed the implications of those words. Did Lady Blackwood anticipate her own demise? Had she been aware of the lurking danger? The revelation sent a chill up his spine, stirring the shadows of dread that seemed to murmur around him. Turning to Clara, he grasped her shoulders tightly, searching her eyes for the fragments of clarity they could salvage from this maelstrom. "Clara, how well did you know Lady Blackwood?" he asked, his voice an urgent rumble against the roar of the storm outside. She was everything," she breathed, her words spilling forth anxiously. "But sometimes distant, an untouchable spirit, wrapped in her own tales of the estate. Yet, she confided that the ivories—" Her voice trailed off, recollection clouding her features. "She believed they were cursed. No one spoke of them without harking back to the dark tales draped over our family like a funeral shroud. Then it is clear. We cannot simply believe Mr. Fenton is the only one with something to gain." Father Brown mused, acutely aware that Clara's muddied past and Fenton's elusive machinations mingled dangerously close with the letter's silent testimony. He felt the weight of fate twist in on itself. Was it the innocent who bore guilt, or those who thrived in deceit? We must find out what lies buried within this cursed legacy. Otherwise, the truth may become a casualty of greed. Just as he turned to leave, an unnatural silence fell upon the room, suffocating the storm's rage. Father Brown's instincts blazed. Something was terribly wrong, yet he couldn't quite place it. The shadows shifted, and before he could react, another loud pounding echoed through the halls, this time accompanied by shocked murmurs. "Clara, I fear we are not alone," he urged, poised to act amidst flaring adrenaline. "Secure yourself. Allow no entry until I—" But he never finished. The door slammed wide open, the gust of wind sending papers soaring about the room like startled birds, and with it entered a figure, cloaked in darkness and dripping with rain, something glinting ominously at their side. It was Fenton, eyes blazing with fury, lips curled in a snarl that made Father Brown's insides churn. "What have you discovered, Father?" he demanded, stepping closer, the menace in his tone vibrating oddly with urgency. "Or must I remind you that the tea set has gone missing?" By now, Clara clutched the table for support, her eyes shifting in confusion as they darted between Father Brown and Fenton. The tension thickened, a coiled serpent waiting to strike at the first hint of distraction. "You would threaten me with a trivial trinket?" Father Brown's voice surfaced, unexpectedly calm amidst the mounting storm. The power shifted, and just as Fenton opened his mouth to speak, a thunderous crash filled the air, lightning illuminating the room, the storm rebelling violently against the night. And at that blinding moment, reality tore itself apart. The figure that loomed behind Fenton opened its mouth to scream, only to produce silence as the candlelight went out, plunging them into pitch darkness. The chaos erupted all at once, a scuffle, the dull thud of bodies colliding, and a sharp, menacing voice cut through the fray. "You are too late, Father." In that instant, Father Brown knew. With the letter now clutched in his hands and armed with greater knowledge of the dangers swirling around him, the real play had only just begun. One truth lingered like the haunting wind outside, and his heart sank as the words replayed in his mind. They were racing against a spectre designed to destroy them all. Chapter 4. The Will in the Vicar's Study. The heavy thud of fist against wood reverberated through the vicarage, a clarion call slicing through the tempest outside, where rain poured in torrents as if it sought to drown the secrets lurking in the dim corners of the study. Father Brown's heart raced as he crossed the threshold from the shadowy hallway into the flickering candlelight, barely poised to witness the scene that unfolded before him. In the center of the room stood Vicar Thompson, his countenance pale, spectacles askew, eyes wild with fear and disbelief, clutching an envelope stained with what could only be described as fresh blood. "Father, you must come quick. This is the will," he stammered, voice quaking as he gestured to the damp letter, looking more like a fragment torn from the very fabric of despair. The air crackled with tension as Father Brown approached, compelled by instinct and faith. "How did you come to possess this?" he murmured, each word chosen with care, as if probing a wound too deep to heal. Vicar Thompson's fingers trembled, and with each inch closer, the captivating scent of anguish washed over Brown, mingling with the dampness of the storm. I found it hidden beneath the floorboards when I was preparing for Lady Blackwood's memorial." His voice faltered, breaching a dam of sorrow. "She warned me to keep it safe, should the time arrive. There was treachery among them," she said. Father Brown's gaze flitted to the vicar's desk, neatened yet strangely bereft, where a solitary oil lamp flickered, casting long shadows over family portraits. Suddenly, a sudden chill swept through the room. It felt as if the walls themselves conspired to whisper secrets through the night, urging him to hear the hidden truths within Vicar Thompson's words. "You are certain this is recent?" Brown pressed, his voice steady, though his heart thrummed with anticipation. "Yes, the ink is barely dry, I swear it," Thompson replied, desperation creeping in. "But you must see, something else is amiss. The will speaks not of inheritance, but of something darker, a nefarious covenant." "What do you mean?" Brown's curiosity piqued as Vicar Thompson's urgency morphed into panic. He snatched the bloody document from the clergyman's hands, the stain stark against the parchment. At the sight of the words inscribed within, Father Brown's blood ran cold, and the earth beneath them seemed to tremble with the weight of foreboding. "Dearest Fenton," he murmured, trailing off as realization dawned like a leaden sky over the horizon. The implications tugged at the edges of his mind. Fenton had been nearing the vicarage mere minutes ago, a storm of fury brewing behind his darkened gaze, seeking something hidden, something that could shatter their tenuous grasp on the truth. "Vicar, what transpired during your discovery?" Father Brown demanded, setting the letter upon the table to glance meaningfully at Thompson. Ignoring the rain thrumming against the windows, a door swung shut with bizarre finality. They were fighting, those who sought the inheritance. Lady Blackwood always spoke of certain legacies, refused to be merely monetary, bonded by blood, yet tainted by lust. It wasn't just about the ivories, the vicar rambled, eyes wide as he continued. She believed the family fated to drown in its greed, entrapped by a curse that threatened to consume them all. "But did you not see any evidence of foul play?" Father Brown queried, scanning the vicar's face for telltale signs of deceit hidden behind the panic. Thompson paused, a frown knitting his brow. "I did not, but there was an unease in their voices, a shifting of familiarity to venom, defiance masked in decorum. It was Mavis, Mark's wife, who spoke of changing alliances. She seemed the most agitated," the vicar confessed, sinking suddenly into silence, yielding to the weight of memories he couldn't quite gather. Father Brown absorbed these revelations, aware that the echoes of past grievances seemed woven intricately with the letter's opaque truths. The vicar's own fear was palpable. Could it be that someone from within their circles sought Lady Blackwood's untimely demise? The thunder outside roared as if in agreement, a monstrous applause heralding heightened suspicion. Then, behind the turbulent clouds of anxiety, the realization struck. Vicar Thompson's own burgeoning motives shimmered just beneath his palpable distress. Was he truly so innocent? Or did he harbor shadows built from years among the Blackwoods? "Your relationship with the family, Vicar, how deep does it run?" Father Brown continued, eyebrows knitting together as waves of intrigue crashed through the atmosphere. Thompson flinched visibly, reluctance painting his features. "I loved her she was like a sister." His outburst rang through the quiet room, straining against the tension. "But a sister, bound by a lineage that bears its own curse. I would never have wished for this to involve myself." A poignant silence fell, thickening like the heavy air before a storm. It spoke of complicity, lingering unspoken. Just then, the silence was shattered by a sudden splintering crack. The door burst ajar with a gust of wind, whipping the papers from the table, sending them swirling to the floor. A revelation now careening toward them on dark wings of fate. Father Brown spun toward the opening, heart racing anew, only to confront a shadowed figure draped in a sinister cloak, eyes aglow like burning coals. "Thompson," the stranger spat, voice rich with malice, "you cannot hide from me any longer." Just before Father Brown could take in the threats embodied in that figure behind the threshold, a gunshot rang out, a shrill punctuation against the rain's tumultuous rhythm. Fumbling rapidly, he hurled himself toward Vicar Thompson, whose horror-stricken face mirrored the dread pulsing through the room. The floorboards beneath them shuddered like a wounded beast. Father Brown could scarcely breathe as murky waves of panic surged through him. That shot had disrupted the delicate thread of their investigation with a precision that wrought chaos. Staring into the void beyond, he sensed that the storm had dulled the boundaries of life and death within its fury. As echoes of the past melded with the violence of the present, Father Brown grasped the edge of insight through the turmoil. The path ahead dim, but laden with revelations. He turned slowly, eyes narrowing, as he uttered a decisive vow. "This will not end here." And as if in reply, lightning fractured the dark sky once more, illuminating both the violated sanctity of the vicar's study and the sinister truth spiraling towards them, a haunting spectre cloaked in treachery, whispering of a destiny that threatened to intertwine their fates within its cursed grasp. Chapter 5. Shadows of the Past. The attic door gave way with a bone-shaking creak, and as Father Brown stepped into the murky expanse, he was met by an oppressive darkness that seemed to breathe like a living entity, clutching at his throat with invisible fingers. Thick, suffocating dust danced in the beam of his pocket lantern, illuminating forgotten relics, dilapidated trunks, tarnished mirrors, and cobwebbed furniture that seemed to whisper of long-buried secrets. The storm roared outside, and as thunder ripped through the night, the sudden crash of something heavy echoed from the far corner. Father Brown's heart raced. The darkness felt watchful, alive with a tangible sense of foreboding that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand on end. He turned, lips forming a silent prayer as he ventured forth, guided by instinct and assurance, amid the tumultuous howling of the wind. The air was thick, tasting of must and memories, a heady mix of nostalgia and dread that settled uneasily in his chest. With each step, the floorboards creaked underfoot, groaning akin to a soul burdened by guilt. Just as he reached out to touch the cold, aging wood of a nearby trunk, the flickering light caught on something half-hidden beneath a tattered tarpaulin, an ornate, antique wooden box, its surface marred by time, yet still possessing an unsettling air of elegance. With cautious reverence, Father Brown knelt beside it, the hairs on his arms raising as if during a silent invocation. The box seemed to pulse with histories left untold, and his fingers brushed against the smooth grain, tracing the intricate carvings that spiraled across its lid, revealing vines entwined with symbols that alluded to darker motifs. As his breath quickened, he pried it open, the hinges groaning in protest. Inside lay a collection of delicate papers, a photograph, yellowed with age, and a small leather-bound journal that stood out like a malign star in the night sky. He pulled the photograph from its resting place, and the lantern light fell upon it, illuminating a scene from a world long vanished. A group of individuals, all smiles and finery. Among them, Lady Blackwood, radiant in a gown that seemed woven from shadows. It was a visage marred by an unsettling tension that mirrored the storm outside. Father Brown squinted, catching glimpses of familiar faces. The vicar, the loathsome Fenton, and another man, cloaked in a vague sense of danger, his eyes dark as the stormy sky. The journal lay beside the photograph, its spine cracked yet inviting, and Father Brown opened it with the same dread curiosity that accompanies one seeking the truth in murky waters. The sins of the past are no less potent than those of the present, he murmured aloud. The scrawled words, an indictment, penned in hurried strokes. The air thickened again, as he realized these were thoughts not born of melancholic reminiscence, but of unresolved torment. The horrific lineage of the Blackwood family unfurled. Through the pages, a sordid history, wrapped in familial loyalty and betrayal, as though each entry threatened to blur the lines between love and hate. Whispers of feuds woven through generations, he read, fascination entwined with apprehension choking him. Murder most foul. The lines did not simply chronicle events. They breathed life into accusation, demanding accountability from the dead, long gone, and the living still ensnared. Just then, the attic was filled with a crack of thunder that rattled the old house to its very foundation, and as if on cue, a figure erupted from the shadows. Clara stumbled into the feeble light, her face ghostly pale, anxiety etched into every feature. "Father, you must come quickly. The others, they've found something," she gasped, panic-laden breath hitching as though she carried the weight of the world. "Clara," he replied, his voice steadying despite the tremors of emotion. "What have they found?" She took a second to gather her breath, fear tightening around her like chains. "The servants, they spoke of a letter, a message. It claims to reveal a truth, Father, the identity of a killer." But before Father Brown could react, his mind racing at the sudden shift in the pulse of this mystery, the light flickered violently, sending shadows leaping forth as if they had minds of their own. The storm outside intensified, a living tapestry of winds and rain that crashed against the roof and windows like accusations upon the guilty. "Come, Clara, we must—" But before he could finish, a sound like the snapping of old wood cracked through the air, drowning out his words. The lantern flickered one last time and extinguished, plunging them into suffocating darkness, the sound echoing ominously around the attic. Father Brown, however, felt a peculiar shift, a sensation that the box had stirred beside him, as if it bore the weight of history upon its hinged back. "Father, I can't see." Clara's voice trembled, a fragile whisper seeking the security of the light. "I know," he assured her, his senses heightening in the wilderness of the dark, eager to ferret out the truth from the chaos of sound. "Listen to me closely." Yet his words trailed off, for in that very moment a subtle scratching pierced the lull, reverberating as if something sought release from the bonds of time. The sensation swelled, an impending revelation merging with dread as he instinctively turned toward the box, heart racing. The back of it seemed to shimmer, a sliver of light tinged with shadow. "No," he breathed, horrified. "It cannot—" And then the noise shattered the silence. A pop, sharper than a gunshot, and with it an arm of smoke whose tendrils clutched at the edges of his consciousness as the air thickened around him. The box ejected from its confines a single piece of paper, a letter stark against the night. "Read it, Father," Clara urged, words trembling against the encroaching darkness. "It may hold the key to everything we've searched for." Father Brown, caught between dread and determination, lunged toward the glimmering slip of parchment that had fluttered away, fear gripping him as thunder cracked loudly outside. With the storm raging as if officiating a damnation, he grasped the letter from the floor, feeling the weight of generations crashing down upon him with unfathomable urgency. He peered at the paper, heart thumping, as he read the first line, words that promised to consume body and spirit alike. "To my beloved Fenton, your father's blood binds us in ways that defy the very laws of inheritance." Just as realization began to dawn, a shattering noise filled the air, a splintering crash from below. Clara gasped, her anxious breath stilled, and Father Brown felt terror grip him around the throat. He met her wide eyes in the flickering darkness, both knowing that the storm had not just been nature's fury, it signaled their encroaching doom. "What have we awakened, Father?" she whispered as the shadows closed in tighter. With a calm that steadied his racing heart, Father Brown whispered back, "The past is never truly past, Clara. It is the shadows that govern the present." And before they could contemplate their next step, the attic door flew open, revealing a figure cloaked in shadows, their intent unmistakably dangerous. "Father Brown," the voice rasped, rich with malevolence, "you've meddled long enough." As the figure stepped closer into the dim light, the storm's fury sang a dirge that foretold despair. Father Brown steeled himself, recognizing the embodiment of secrets long buried, drawn into a dangerous whirlpool of fate that threatened to rip them all asunder. The past was here, breathing, demanding its reckoning at that very moment, and he braced himself, knowing all too well that the revelations they were about to inherit would plunge them into the heart of darkness. Chapter 6. Ghosts of Guilt. "Father Brown, I swear it was just there," a wisp of a shadow pacing back and forth in the corridor. Clara's voice was a breathless whimper, swallowed by the storm's howling fury outside. A flickering candle illuminated her wide, terrified eyes, casting frail shadows against the damp walls of the old attic. The echoes of thunder mingled with her words as if the heavens themselves bore witness to their escalating dread. Moments ago, silence had fallen, thick and oppressive, cloaked in an unsettling unease. Now it was shattered like glass. "What did you see, Clara?" Father Brown pressed, not bothering with reassurances as he moved toward the narrow window, where the storm lashed against the panes like a chorus of banshees. Lightning slashed through the darkness, revealing moments of chaos lurking beyond, a mass of twisted branches and darkened shapes twisting grotesquely in the wind, perhaps a figment of their collective fear. It was an apparition, flickering in and out, as if caught between this world and the next, she stammered, stepping closer to him, the enormity of their plight weighing heavily between them. "They say the estate is haunted, that a curse lingers here, steeped in blood and betrayal." Yet the terror in her voice pricked at Father Brown's keen discernment, assailing an inner compass that could sift truth from fright. "Apparition or not, fear hangs heavy in the air, Clara, but we must discern the cause." A sudden crash resounded from below, reverberating through the attic like the tolling of a death knell, accentuated by the harsh snaps of the tempest. Heavy footsteps echoed through the corridors, sending icy tendrils of apprehension crawling up Father Brown's spine. "Stay here," he instructed, with a firmness he hoped would shield her from the encroaching dread. He stepped forward, peering through the grimy window, where the wind whipped rain against the glass with a desperate insistence. In the midst of the storm's fury, the light caught the faint outline of a figure stumbling under the weight of its own secrets, darting toward the eastern wing, far from the safety of the front parlors. Father Brown's instincts stirred, drawing him toward the clamor of footsteps below, tethering them to a mystery that pulsated beneath the house's ancient bones. With clenched fists, he descended the narrow staircase, each step accompanied by an echo, a chorus of lamentation that underscored the gravity of their task. Reaching the landing, the worn floorboards creaked ominously beneath him, like groans from the very soul of the estate, beseeching for mercy upon its haunted past. The open door of the parlor loomed large, crackling with the energy of unrest. He hesitated just long enough to recognize the faint scent of damp paper, an ink, a clue, and an omen intertwined. The candlelight danced within, casting playful shadows upon a somber tableau. Vicar Thompson, red-faced and agitated, and Lady Blackwood, trembling, her manicured fingers clutching a blood-stained letter as if it held the key to salvation or doom. The remnants of their earlier disagreement hung heavily, rendered mute beneath the weight of revelations they could scarcely comprehend. "Father, it is here," Thompson declared, his voice taut with desperation. "Look at what we found near the back doors, beneath the cellar staircase." Lady Blackwood's eyes darted between the letter and Father Brown, wrought with anxiety. "There is a history here, a ghost of guilt that stalks us. This letter, it is merely a fragment, a piece of history we cannot dismiss lightly, nor should we allow our doubts to cloud our reason." The vicar's hand trembled as he extended the sodden parchment toward Father Brown, revealing just enough of the words scrawled in an erratic hand for him to decipher. "The reckoning of sins shall return as the grave devours its own." "Who sent this?" Father Brown thundered, now acutely aware of the urgency pulsating within the room. The answer was too clear. The letter exuded a malicious past that demanded reckoning. "Some say it's a curse, others a warning," Thompson replied, the rigidity of fear draining the color from his face. "And now it seems to stake its claim upon us. It can't be a coincidence that this note turns up now, can it?" Father Brown mused aloud, stepping closer to inhale the essence of fear still lingering in the air. Clara spoke of shadows, and now accusations hang like smoke. Even the air is laden with ghosts. The estate itself breathes with the past's unresolved sins. Just as the last words echoed, the front door slammed open with a resonance that sent shivers through the party gathered there. A gust of wind barreled into the room, spiraling like a wraith. The storm outside shrieked a warning as a figure entered, soaked to the bone, cloaked in black. The other guests recoiled, their expressions morphing into a cocktail of dread and intrigue. A ghost risen from the depths of a winding tale long forgotten. "I told you not to venture forth," Fenton's voice boomed from the doorway, breaking the stillness with the electric charge of confrontation. "But you never heed caution, do you?" Father Brown exchanged glances, discerning tangled emotions beneath bravado, while Fenton's tan face glistened with rain, aglow with something more disturbing than mere frustration. Something deeper, hinting at layers of deception swirling just beneath, stirred the air, like the promise of tragedy from the storm beyond. "We've found something that could expose the heart of this mystery," Lady Blackwood declared, shaking her head toward Fenton with fragile defiance, seemingly at once protective and vulnerable. "Spare us the theatrics, my lady," he shot back, eyes volcanic with simmering jealousy. "You think I didn't suspect? Whatever you unearth, let it remain buried, for I assure you, we do not belong to this house, nor does it claim us." With those words, time twisted unnaturally as thunder shook the house, and Clara breathed in sharply, but her eyes widened once more, drawing Father Brown's attention. "Father," she gasped, pointing toward the faded tapestry on the wall, its fibers undulating as if a ghostly breath coursed through it. Amongst the intricate vines, words were emerging, a phantasmagorical illusion illuminated by the flickering candlelight. "They're not merely woven threads," Father Brown whispered, stepping forward as if to grasp the fleeting tendrils of revelation. "They tell a story, of bloodlines intertwined, of guilt that requires a reckoning." But before he could peer closer, a sudden trembling echoed through the estate, violently shaking its structure as if the weight of countless sins threatened to collapse inward. The front door banged shut with a forceful thud, plunging them back into shadowy chaos that would not relent. Then, piercing the electric atmosphere, there came a sound, a soft whisper against the din of the storm, barely heard yet resounding with gravity, a name tangled in grief. Fenton. With every soul turned toward the unnatural resonance, something shifted within Father Brown, an elusive thread pulling taut, charging the air with a chilling premonition. As the tempest reigned outside, he sensed the complexity of layers unfurling, of dark truths laid bare before them, while the storm echoed not just its fury, but the eternal lament of those still haunting the estate. And just as realization took root, the lights extinguished, plunging them back into consuming darkness, a darkness alive with guilt that now sat heavy upon their hearts. And before Father Brown could utter a sound of forewarning, an anguished scream screeched through the walls, sending everyone recoiling against the shadows. What had they awakened, and who among them, if anyone, could be trusted to stand against the bitter tide of the ghosts they had unearthed? Chapter 7. A Shadow at Matins. The piercing shriek of the church bells sliced through the tempest, drowning out the distant echoes of the storm that raged beyond the sanctuary walls. Father Brown stumbled into St. Agatha's, his heart racing as he found himself swept into a maelstrom of fear and confusion. The congregation's eyes drawn toward him like moths to a flickering flame. The dim light of flickering candles cast long, quivering shadows across the solemn faces, illuminating not only the wooden pews and rustic altar, but also the heart of something deeply amiss. He sensed it in the charged air, thick with unvoiced accusations and hidden sins lurking behind pious expressions. "Father," a voice called out from the front, breaking through the low murmur that had risen like steam from the gathered bodies. It was Jessica Thornton, a parishioner with a reputation for volubility. Her face, pale and drawn, was shadowed under a storm of dark curls. "They say you're here to address the shadows haunting our town, yet our own sanctuary is rife with darkness." Her eyes darted nervously toward the gathered faithful, spotlighting the anxious whispers and furtive glances shared among them. The unsettling tremors of guilt and trepidation intertwining like invisible vines. "Indeed," Father Brown replied, fixing his gaze on the pulpit as he gathered his thoughts, the world outside howling an ominous symphony to an audience of souls. "But listen closely, my friends. Just as thunder cleaves the air into a tumultuous chaos, our hearts carry burdens, the stains of what has been done, what remains hidden." A murmur of unsettled agreement rippled through the attendees. Just beyond, in the farthest corner, old Mrs. Milner clutched her prayer book tighter, her knuckles white with anxiety. Her pious facade could not hide the telltale trembling and the suddenly haunted look that darkened her eyes when the mention of guilt caught in Father Brown's oration. "Before we seek redemption," he continued, pacing deliberately, "we must first acknowledge the shadows that linger among us, the ones which neither confession nor prayer can absolve until laid bare beneath cander's light." The words hung heavy in the flickering air, resonating like an unyielding chord struck in the darkness. The sermon dipped and swayed like the trees outside, the howling winds interjecting at intervals, twisting the tension in the room to a near breaking point. Father Brown's keen observance caught a few exchanged glances, a fleeting gaze between Mrs. Milner and Mr. Thompson, both brimming with unspoken words, pregnant with anxiety. And yet, as the ambience thickened, a single, shouted prayer broke the escalating tension. "Forgive us our trespasses," declared Vicar Thompson, his voice filled with urgency, though every syllable seemed tethered to the uncertainty swirling around him. But what about those injustices that continue to prey on us? Those who walk amongst us with tainted souls? The crowd shifted uneasily, and from the pulpit, Father Brown felt a prickling of clarity amidst the fog. Yes, we all wear masks, some painted with pious intent, others crafted from guilt. He let that sink in, watching as heads nodded in accord, yet some recoiled, faces twisting in dismay. The sins that bind us can only be uprooted through the pursuit of truth, and in turn, whomever harbors those sins must reckon with their past. Then, unexpectedly, the doors burst open, the howling wind sweeping through the church like a spectral wail. It flung the hymnal pages into a whirlwind. Their clattering letters spilled forth like incantations of distress, and a soaked figure staggered into the candlelit horror. It was Fenton, his brow furrowed and drenched in rain, boots caked with mud, the very picture of a man wrung dry with emotion. Murmurs echoed through the nave, words melting into the wooden beams of the church, suspicion brewing anew. "Matters grow dire," he exclaimed, breathless yet commanding. "Something dark stirs. The shadows are not just tales for the unwary. The estate holds secrets even the most devoted cannot fathom." Father Brown watched as Lady Blackwood, seated near the front, shifted uncomfortably, eyes flickering toward Fenton with the unease of a suspect caught unaware. "Enough of your dramatics, Fenton," she huffed, though her voice quivered beneath its bravado. "You speak as if—" But her voice faltered, and in that moment, Father Brown inhaled, sharply. Was it not the very same tone of defensiveness he had noticed when Fenton had entered the estate? A concealed fear, a deception, lurking just beneath the surface. The storm rattled at the doors outside, sending another wave of unease through the crowd as they collectively shied away from the raw anguish that threatened to seep into their lives. The vicar's voice pierced through the tension again, though more tremulous than before. Could it be that the tempest outside mirrors the turmoil within? His eyes darted, imploring Father Brown. Surely we cannot let ourselves be consumed by the fear of what lies hidden in our hearts. But Father Brown's attention had shifted back to Fenton, observing the man's hands twitching anxiously by his sides, how he purposefully avoided Lady Blackwood's penetrating gaze. "Fenton," Father Brown stepped forward, his voice a low murmur against the tumult. "What is it that you fear most? You hold resentment towards something or someone here today?" The flicker of his eyes answered the question before words even graced his lips. "No, Father. I would never allow personal fear to skew my faith." He fell easily into the crafted rhetoric. But Fenton's words wavered as suspicion swept through the room again. With the growling winds clawing at the church, the tension reached a fever pitch, darkness pooling around them, threatening to consume everything they held dear. Father Brown masked his rising intuition behind a facade of calm, convinced now that this congregation cloaked more than mere beliefs. They cloaked truths desperate to emerge. He felt the heaviness of anticipation like a coiled serpent, ready to bite. And then it happened. A sudden darkness swept across the candlelight, extinguished the flames, plunging the room into an eerie blackness, punctured only by the thunder's furious growl. In that incomprehensible moment, the faint sound of a thud echoed, a figure collapsing, a body hitting the floor, and then the panicked rush of feet stirring into chaos, cries of desperation exploding amid the mounting fear. Father Brown's heart raced as he pushed forward, hands straining against the enveloping dark, his instincts painfully alert for the clues now hidden within the carnage of misplaced faith. "Help! It's Fenton!" Jessica shouted frantically, though trembling now under the weight of a truth that pulled at her mind. He's fallen." But as Father Brown knelt down into the tumult, a shape emerged from the disarray, unsteady yet unyielding, face pale and shadowed, the familiar scent of rain, and something much darker escaping from Fenton's lips as his eyes flickered dangerously wide. "They cannot," was all he managed, the words halting, and in that moment, beneath the thunder's final crack, the world around them spun into sin-laden chaos, encased in the web of darkness that had been woven long before. Father Brown's gut clenched. Realization struck with the force of the storm outside. "What do you know, Fenton?" he demanded, seizing the moment, a thread pulled taut, yearning to untangle the shrouded secrets gripping them all. But as Fenton's lips parted in the depths of fear, the lights sprang to life, illuminating the truth, or perhaps a terrible, dangerous lie. The church was empty, but for the living and the ghosts that shuffled amid the pews, and the revelation that loomed as foreboding as the storm clouds outside. Where had the congregation gone? Had their fears consumed them? And what, if anything, had they now escaped? With thunder rolling a taut chorus of despair, Father Brown braced himself, adrift in shadows and revelations that deserved to be unearthed, poised on the edge of an unthinkable truth, ready to unveil itself in the heart of Matins. Chapter 8. The Portrait That Spoke. The storm outside roared with renewed fury, sending violent gusts of wind whipping through the partially opened window, casting dark shadows across the art-filled room where Father Brown stood, transfixed, breathless, at the frame that now hung unveiled before him. Framed in regal gold, the portrait of a woman with striking features locked both his attention and his thoughts. The resemblance to the mysterious local woman, Eleanor Blanchard, was undeniable and unsettling enough to make his skin prickle. Painted with an intensity that suggested the artist had been a lover haunted by their subject, the eyes pierced through him with a significance far beyond mere canvas and oil, eyes that seemed to gleam in the candlelight with secrets long buried. "Father Brown, it's macabre, isn't it?" remarked Lady Blackwood, standing fidgeting beside him, her painted nails tapping nervously against her pendant. A final remnant of the past she wished to escape. The storm had stilled to an ominous calm, yet the atmosphere in the estate was anything but tranquil. Dim lights flickered, casting dancing shadows that seemed to flit between the edges of reality and artistry, breeding unsettling thoughts as their collective gaze grew heavy with foreboding. An uncanny resemblance, wouldn't you say? But why? The woman has long since departed. Father Brown turned slightly towards her, intent on deciphering not only the painting, but the pulse of trepidation thrumming through the room. "Is it just the face that haunts you, Lady Blackwood?" he asked quietly, digging deeper into the layers of her demeanor. "Is it merely an echo of the past, or does it resonate with something more immediate?" "That's nonsense, Father. A haunting portrait. That's all it is," she snapped defensively, her composure faltering. But the way her voice cracked suggested the notion had struck deeper than she cared to admit. Gripped by emotion, her gaze darted to the painting, before slipping away, an instinctual act of self-preservation masked by indignation. As Father Brown's observant eye caught the shift of color in her cheeks, a realization ignited within. Everyone here seems so enamored with this portrait, yet the construction of its essence feels more ominous than beautiful. Tell me, did the deceased perhaps harbour secrets that drew forth such passion? Lady Blackwood's silence screamed louder than words, the flicker of uncertainty in her eyes confirming that her heart harboured a storm of its own. Drawing closer to the portrait, Father Brown noticed something peculiar, a slip of green ribbon pinned at the corner of the frame, neatly tucked yet distinctly out of place. He gently tugged it free, allowing it to unfurl and cascade to the ground, revealing not only its exquisite craftsmanship, but the faint traces of red, a stain that could only be blood. "Ah, a scandal," gasped a voice from the shadows of the doorway. It was Vicar Thompson, his brows knitted in alarm, his steely demeanour wavering before the discovery. Transfixed by the ribbon, Father Brown pondered the implications. "Isn't it intriguing, Vicar?" he mused, his mind collating information with the keen precision of a watchmaker. The blending of art and dark history. What speaks more, love or hate? Thompson stepped further into the room, shaking his head as if bewilderment lent him some strength. "It speaks of the very fabric of life's intricacies, a riddle coded in hues and shadows." He hesitated, glancing nervously at Lady Blackwood before continuing. "Yet this isn't just art. It's an accusation veiled as a memory. The questions unfurl. Are we to take it as a homage or a warning?" "Perhaps both," Father Brown murmured, eyeing the remnants of crimson that might tell tales of jealousy, regret, or lost love, the flutter of memories that come too late. Art, after all, bears the significant weight of truth, and sometimes the weight can crush the soul of those portrayed. The atmosphere thickened with tension as darkening thoughts settled over them, sweeping as relentlessly as the storm beyond. What they could not ignore was that this portrait seemed to bind them all, like a curse woven through layers of paint, where jealousy once flourished. Who was she, this woman? Father Brown pressed forward, his eyes roving over the portrait, imagining the swift brushstrokes of the artist's hand, the troubled heart behind them. What do we truly know of her, and what provides the foundation for her likeness to Eleanor? Perhaps it was the crack of thunder that ignited the flames of hysteria within Lady Blackwood. But before she could speak, the door swung wide and Fenton stumbled in, a dishevelled apparition from the depths of the storm. Rain-soaked and gasping, panic danced in his eyes. "Father, you must listen. I overheard something." "Did you discover this curious painting?" Father Brown interjected, his tone drawing the attention of both Lady Blackwood and Thompson. "Yes, it was once tucked away, languishing in the private gallery," Fenton replied, his voice barely rising above the rolling thunder. "And I heard whispers, murmurs of disdain among the villagers about the artist and his subject." "That's riveting, isn't it?" Lady Blackwood scoffed, a hint of mockery barely masking her palpable agitation. "When discussing the artist, judgment flies smoother than ink." Fenton ignored her jibe, his focus locked onto Father Brown, urgency brightening his expression. "They say she was loved and hated in equal measure, a muse twisted in emotions that could break the very heart of man. But that's not all. I find myself tangled as I wondered at the dangers you pursue. I fear there's more to her legacy than mere artistry." "There's always more," muttered Father Brown, the gears of his reasoning clicking into place. He turned to the portrait once more, contemplation deepening as Fenton's words reverberated in his mind. A shift in the air caught his attention, tension spiking again, as whispers of deeper currents coiled through the very fabric of the estate. As if summoned by his thoughts, an ethereal echo of prose filled the room, a cadenced whisper curling through the still air. To those who worship at the altar of ink and desire, tread carefully. The brush strokes may yield not just beauty, but betrayal. Something in the air shifted. The lights flickered once more, and an overwhelming stench of fear engulfed him, igniting a primal instinct deep within. Out of the storm's clamor came an unmistakable sound, a thud that resonated like a distant drumbeat against flesh as bodies collided with dark and tangible intent. The air crackled, and in that instant, as if drawing breath from shadows, the portrait fell, the glass shattering, the image splintering into chaos. Before any could move, the quiet gasps erupted into panic as another figure emerged from the darkness, their expression twisted with malicious resolve, a cold glint of steel reflected in the candlelight, a dagger, and amidst the peril, cold laughter echoed like the tolling of bells long dead. "Shall we unveil the truth eternally hidden?" whispered the figure. Chapter 9. The Crossing of Paths. A scream shattered the candlelit stillness, echoing through the lavish dining room like the crack of a whip, instantly dismissing any hope of civility. The well-set table, adorned with fine china and silverware, felt like a stage set for tragedy rather than a feast. Outside, the storm thrashed against the windows, blurring the line between safety and chaos, while thunder rumbled ominously, as if warning of the drama unfolding within. Father Brown, his brow furrowed in concentration, darted forward, his hands instinctively clenching around the table. "What was that?" he demanded, his voice ringing clear amidst the din. "It's just the thunder." Lady Blackwood gasped, her porcelain face drained of color, yet her eyes flared with a wild disquiet as they flit around the room in search of an escape that lay just beyond the windows. Yet too many shadows converged in the corners of this room. Thompson's worried countenance, Fenton's conspiratorial glance, and Eleanor's ghostly presence in the portrait that had been quietly placed on an easel beside the dining table. What could this evening hide beneath its veneer of civility? "Ah, but the thunder cannot account for the sound of fear," Father Brown replied, peeling away his gaze from the window's jagged edge, his intuition stirring uneasily. "It often carries with it the weight of unspoken truths." The room held its breath, all eyes turning to him, aware that in the gathering gloom, mirth had transformed into menace. He felt it, a current of tension, palpable and sharp, pulsing like a hidden threat just beneath their superficial calm. The brooding atmosphere intensified as the guests resumed their seats, silent but visibly shaken, their earlier banter now drowned amid this shared anxiety. Distrust rippled through the air like ripples across an unbroken pond. Father Brown placed a hand on the table, grounding himself as he absorbed the oscillating energy. "We should raise our glasses, my friends, and drown our fears in the fine wine of connection," he suggested, his voice laced with irony, for he could see the fractures in their facade. "We're here to conquer our demons, not be overtaken by them." "Spare me the cryptic wisdom, Father," snapped Lady Blackwood, her voice taut as held breath. "We're past toasting now." The undercurrent of her words mingled with dread, whilst fear flickered across Fenton's face. "Perhaps we are not past anything at all," Father Brown replied, directing his gaze toward Eleanor's portrait, the surface still shadowy, yet betraying hints of tragedy with every glance. "What lies beneath our appetites for dinner may be easily mirrored in the unfinished tales of this woman." He tilted his head as if to see past the edges of the canvas, as if the darkness could whisper some fatal secret. An obsession with the past is as hollow as a straw in a storm, is it not? Vicar Thompson interjected cautiously, his traditional woolen vestments soaking up the air's tension. "What is it you presume she whispers, Father? What could it matter now?" There was sharpness in his voice that belied the nerves that miraculously gathered strength. Father Brown studied the vicar closely, catching the slightest crack in the polished exterior as Thompson spoke. There was trepidation lurking in his eyes, as if he too had danced too close to the embers of secrets he had not yet reconciled. Obsession or memory, it remains a crossing of paths, Father Brown observed, folding his arms, the intrigue of the evening edging closer to a climactic point. "And I dare say our paths have crossed far too intentionally for each of us to be here by mere accident." Before he could expand on this thought, a flicker of movement caught his eye. In the corner of the room, one of the long-stemmed candles extinguished itself utterly, snuffed out as if foretelling some design worthy of darkness. All eyes turned swiftly toward the area, dread snapping through the gathered group. "Perhaps the darkness has come to reclaim what it lost," Fenton muttered, his voice barely above a whisper, a tremor breaking through the fragile calm. Nevertheless, it was Fenton's own evocation of shared peril that added weight to his words, forcing realization into stark relief. Two sets of footsteps hurried up the stairs beyond the dining room. A crash rang out, the sound scarcely audible over the howling wind, yet potent enough to send a shiver spiraling through the assembled party. Lady Blackwood's lips pressed thin, palpable anxiety choking her usual composure. "That cannot be good," she declared, her perfectly manicured fingers gripping the edge of the dining table as though bracing against the unseen terror racing towards them. "I say we ought to leave this place at once." "Leave?" replied Father Brown, suppressing a rising tide of irritation, "and miss the opportunity to uncover the very secrets that have drawn us together? I think not. Rather, we must descend into the depths and unravel these darkly woven fates." As the gust of stormy wind hurled itself against the house again, scattering papers from the dining table to the floor like leaves in autumn, a fog of unease thickened past all threads of civility. It hung over them, suffocating as thunder grumbled insistently outside. With an air of painful determination, Father Brown rose, the weight of the evening pressing upon his conscience. "I suggest we hold the dinner, punctuated by honesty and confrontation." With that, the room lost its decorum entirely. The various actors, a web of jealousy and ambition, forced to contend with the intricate dance of their emerging truths. Conversations erupted chaotically, each voice vying for articulation, accusations dripping like venom. The fiery exchanges flickered between the guests, illuminating the growing shadows, as Father Brown observed the tapestry of human emotion, entwining, snaring his guests in a crucible of self-revelation. "The artist who painted that portrait had deep-seated pain," Thompson accused, voice rising above the pandemonium. "Tell us the truth about your relationship with her, Lady Blackwood." "I had nothing to do with her," she retorted, sudden indignation flaring like the tempest outside. "Those were whispers from sick minds. How dare you weave together my past with the grotesque tapestry of her intrigue?" But as the tension climaxed, a sinister scream erupted from the shadows, the very walls quaking under its weight. "No!" Fenton shouted, stumbling back and pointing toward the threshold, leading into the main hallway, his eyes widening in horror. It cannot be. It's come for us. Against the lake of voices and thunder's applause, a figure emerged from the shrouded recesses, a shadow flaring with a blade, tarnished steel catching the glimmer of candlelight. Their eyes glowed with ruthless intent, as a wall of silence engulfed the table, a palpable pause that drew every breath tight. "Now, shall we unveil what's eternally hidden?" whispered an ethereal voice, wrapped in malice, sending a chill down Father Brown's spine. And before he could reach out to quell the impending tempest of action, the figure lunged forward, the dagger raised aloft, and the future stood unmoored, teetering on the brink of calamity. Chapter 10. The Cross in the Attic. The attic door burst open with a violent crash, propelled by the wind's howling fury, revealing the darkened space within like a demon escaping its confines. Shadows whipped across the walls, swirling as if alive, while a single candle's flame sputtered, flickering futilely against the chaotic thunderstorm. Heart racing, Father Brown stepped inside, the oppressive air wrapping around him, heavy with the scent of damp wood and mildew, remnants of secrets long held in this dust-laden chamber. His heart beat in rhythm with the storm outside, echoing the chaos that swirled within. As he focused his eyes, straining against the dimness, a glint caught his eye, a fractured gleam, thrusting a town of conflict amidst an ocean of disarray. Through the gloomy haze, he discerned an ornate cross hanging sideways, its silver glimmer dulled by layers of neglect, a somber reminder of faith and the heavy burden it bore. What was once a symbol of salvation appeared, askew, almost sinister, weighted down by more than just wood and metal. It held the residue of betrayal and unresolved dilemmas, whispering curses of a betrayal wrapped in somber faith. His fingers traced the cool contours of the cross as curiosity mingled with dread. Was it merely a forgotten artifact from years past, or a piece of a puzzle that could entangle them all still further? The hinges of fate seemed ready to creak open and reveal the convoluted narrative lying beneath. The methodical ticking of a clock hung resonant in the air, a solemn witness to the hour growing darker, more urgent, as a memory stirred at the back of his mind. A blood-stained letter, doused in mystery. Footsteps echoed softly behind him, breaking the spell as he turned, spotting Fenton, drawn by the wraith-like allure of the unknown. "Father Brown, what have you uncovered?" Fenton gasped, breathless, eyes wide, his earlier bravado now replaced by palpable fear. "Is that a cross? What does it mean, Father?" Brown regarded him carefully, a revelation dawning. "This cross, it holds witness to something greater than religious symbolism. Its improper positioning and the layers of dust weave a tale of neglect, perhaps wrapped in guilt. Can you feel it, Fenton? The weight of something unresolved?" Fenton's lips tightened, anxiety tracing across his features. And yet it remains. The artist knew of its existence. Could it not be that it serves as a clue, or merely a framing device for romance lost, or betrayed? There was a tremor beneath his voice, perhaps a fear coursing through the man, hidden motives crawling just beneath the surface, whispering in a language of betrayal. Yet an innocent facade shielded something deeper. Father Brown swallowed hard, his instincts a tapestry of intuition unfurling amidst the turbulence. Art has a peculiar way of transmuting emotion, a portrayal of love or disdain, a whisper of darkness hiding in beauty. What if this cross signifies a rift in faith itself, or a reminder of the unseen battle that threads through taller tales of passion and vengeance? Just then, a muffled scream pierced the air, a visceral echo of anguish that swept through the dimly lit attic like a cold draught. Fenton flinched, then froze, fear rooting him to the spot. "It came from behind the wall," he exclaimed, pointing, panic igniting in his eyes. "We must find the source before it's too late." With urgency, they advanced cautiously toward the far wall, their footsteps stirring up tiny motes of dust. With each step, the mounting dread called to them like a siren's song. Father Brown pressed his ear against the cold surface, listening intently, attuned to the whispers swimming beneath the echoes of thunder. There it was again, a shuffling, a low moan, the sound of despair wrapped tightly within shame. "It's a concealed room. I can almost feel the heartbeat of its hidden truth," Father Brown murmured. "We must press forward, Fenton." A sudden burst of adrenaline urged him to shove against the wall. A loose panel gave way under pressure, swinging open to reveal a cramped space beyond. Darkness enveloped them, cloaking what lay inside, yet the unmistakable outline of a body could be seen sprawled out in an unnatural position on the floor, limbs twisted at odd angles. The storm outside seemed to curl in on itself, the air thickening with dread, an uncanny silence washing over the attic like a funeral shroud. Father Brown gasped as he stepped back, horror gripping his chest. "No, not again," Fenton shouted, backing hard against the wall, eyes wide, breath quickening. "What devilry has come upon us? Could this be the artist?" As the candle flickered wildly, shadows lunging as if seeking escape, a half-formed revelation sparked within Father Brown. The truth was hanging by a single thread. "Fenton, stay here," he barked suddenly, needing to quell the panic that had begun to take hold of both of them. "I will fetch assistance. There's no time to lose." But just then, as he turned to retreat, the cross on the wall swung sharply, a loud clank echoing like a death knell throughout the attic. And there, beneath the floorboards, he caught a glimpse of something glimmering, a sharp piece of evidence jutting from the floor, stained red, sticky from the past, its edges hiding an enigma cloaked beneath layers of history and fear. "By the heavens," Father Brown gasped, striding forward to grasp the object, and when his fingers finally clasped around it, realization dawned like the crack of dawn, breaking through the clouds. An ornate dagger encrusted with symbols of faith, merging the hallowed with the forbidden. But before he could draw breath to cry out, the shadows lunged wildly behind him, the oppressive silence of the attic broken by a sinister hiss that resonated in the darkness. "You shouldn't have come here, Father." The voice dripped with malice, the weight of looming betrayal crashing down upon him, darkness coiling firmly at his feet. There was no escape. The deep recess of betrayal had found him, and as he turned slowly, dagger in hand, the true unraveling awaited just beyond the pinprick of light at the mouth of the attic door. Everything was at stake, and the truth lay waiting, wrapped in the fabric of a faith and treachery that had yet to be revealed. Chapter 11. The Last Passage. A scream broke forth behind him, reverberating with a raw, primal desperation that turned Father Brown's blood to ice. He whirled to face the door, heart pounding like a warning bell, darkness pooling around him as the candle sputtered, fighting to stay alight against the encroaching tempest. The figures from the dinner had faded into the recesses of memory. Now, only this chilling sound remained, echoing through the rafters of the attic like a sinister promise of violence. "Fenton!" he shouted, his voice cracking, but it was drowned out by the roiling thunder that shook the very bones of the house. The shadows danced malevolently around him, each flicker of light twisting their shapes into grotesque forms, a vivid tapestry of fear and foreboding, a reminder of the imminent peril they faced. He felt the dagger, forged from the very essence of betrayal, grip coldly in his hand, a grotesque talisman in this sanctuary of secrets and decay. "Father, we need to—" Fenton's voice trembled, barely above a whisper, his previously forgotten bravado snuffed out in an instant. A dark figure loomed at the attic entrance, obscured by the veil of shadow and shadowed by the rolling storm beyond. "Stay where you are." The command slipped from Father Brown's lips, firm and instinctual. He stepped backward cautiously, aware of the body sprawled on the floor behind him, unaware how close he was to the edge of something unfathomable. Who goes there? For a moment, silence filled the attic, a suffocating blanket woven of dread and anticipation. Then a familiar voice, tainted with venom and bitterness, slithered through the gloom. "Such noble intentions, Father Brown, but you're far too late to extract justice from the hands of fate." The shadows seemed to cower, and for an instant, for the briefest flicker of time, Father Brown thought he saw Lady Blackwood's face, etched in the darkness, eyes glinting like shards of glass in the candlelight. "What have you done?" he pressed, shifting his grip on the dagger, the ornate hilt slipping slightly as sweat beaded on his brow. The atmosphere around him thickened, loaded with silence that carried a weight far greater than fear. The shadows stirred, as if stirred by an unseen current, each flicker of light revealing fleeting glimpses of dread. A soft, almost mocking laughter echoed through the attic as the figure stepped closer, breaking the veil of shadow. It was Thompson, his handsome visage twisted into a mask of manic delight. "Ah, Father, you have such a penchant for deducing the impossible, yet you stand before the unspeakable truth." The artist was a mere spectre, her tragedy secondary to her legacy of deceit, a legacy that binds us all, irrevocably. The wind howled outside, tears revealing hidden intentions, even as each word came dripping like a slow poison. "You all knew her secrets. You are entangled in a web of your own making. Guilt saturates this place. So much guilt." He lunged forward, his voice rising, an unpredictable tempest just threatening to pour over. Who better to carry the burden of sin than a dying faith? Who better to be the scapegoat than Father Brown? Father Brown's thoughts raced, combing through the panic. That blood-stained letter, the ornate cross, a tapestry of fears woven through whispered histories, all leading back to this calamitous climax. "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice steady, eyes narrowing as he sought to outwit the imminent danger. The pattern unfurled in his mind, intricate yet chaotic, letters lodged in his subconscious like splinters. "Tell me the truth, Thompson." A moment's hesitation sliced the tension. The air crackled with the weight of secrets yet to surface. Thompson's manic demeanor faltered, if only for a heartbeat. "You truly wish to know?" His laughter died abruptly, replaced by a grim seriousness that twisted his features. "You wish to pry open the coffin of morality for your own sanctity. It will destroy you, Father. Justice is but a myth, all stained with blood." As if summoned by those very words, the world outside erupted in chaos. A crack of thunder split the air, sending reverberations through the house, as if the heavens themselves protested the sins being unraveled within. Father Brown felt the weight of those words settle upon him like shadows falling at dusk. "In the end, you will find nothing but despair." Thompson stepped closer, the candlelight casting an eerie glow on his face, revealing a wild, manic sparkle in his eye that belied a deeper fear. What if the answer lies not in the artist's death, but in the shattering of the illusion we have all built? What if redemption is unattainable? Magic mingled with despair as Thompson held up the cross, glimmering now with a sinister light, an artifact that had tied their fates together. Suddenly, a thunderous crack within the house sent Fenton whirling backward. "Father, behind you!" he shouted, but the words rushed past in a cascade of panic. With a swift motion, a heavy object crashed down, exerting its own gravity upon the fragile unraveling of the night. The floor splintered as a heavy chandelier fell from its perch, swinging precariously. Father Brown instinctively raised the dagger, prepared to defend against the impending chaos, though there was little he could do against the weight of fate. In that decisive moment, as loose bricks tumbled and shattered glass rained down, Lady Blackwood's voice erupted from the shadows, filled with righteous fury. "No, I won't let this happen. You are all fools." The hollow thud of her words punctuated the storm like an unmerited exclamation point. Out of the blackness she emerged, her eyes wild and her dress torn, a stunning apparition wrought from their tangled web. "You will not take him. This is my reckoning." Father Brown felt a rush of cold panic as he realized he was torn amidst the chaos unfolding. Would there be justice for the dead artist, or merely collateral damage in their quest for truth? As her hand swept toward the flickering candle, a sudden flash caught his eye. There, pressed into the floor by the lamplight, it was another letter, folded and stained, daring to reveal the truths and lies entwined in their fates. But before he could grasp it, a strangled cry erupted from the shadows, sharp and slicing, a harbinger of chaos cascading toward them all like a shadowhead arrow. The storm seized the skies outside, enveloping them all in thunder. The candle flared, causing the shadows to leap toward Father Brown, who now realized the very foundations had begun to crack, and all he could do was brace himself for the oncoming storm that promised to uncover more than just a murder. It sought to expose the darkest corners of all their hearts, entwined in the fabric of deceit and desire, where the line between victim and villain faded to oblivion. And then, the world tilted precariously on its axis. The truth was poised on the edge of a revelation, leaving Father Brown teetering at the brink, his destiny about to be rewritten, when suddenly the ground underfoot erupted in a cacophony of destruction. In that instant, reason and chaos collided, leaving nothing but anticipation hanging in the very air, pregnant with the promise of enlightenment or doom. Chapter 12. The Mercy of the Murderer. A scream clawed through the air, a frantic whisper of terror that turned Father Brown's blood cold, weaving dread into the flesh of the storm-lashed attic. He could feel the shadows, malevolent and alive, shifting around him like dark silks, slipping through trembling fingers. Outside, thunder rumbled like an ancient being awakening from slumber, and a flash of lightning illuminated the room, bathing the figures in a spectral glow. His heart raced as he clutched the dagger, its ornate hilt slick with the sensation of impending doom, as if it had absorbed every whisper of fear that lingered in the air. "Fenton!" he shouted, desperate to locate his companion amidst the unfolding chaos. Yet his voice was swallowed by the howling winds that rushed through the broken eaves like a wraith of sorrow. "Get down!" came Fenton's urgent rasp, as another crash resonated, splinters flying like confetti around an unseen dancer. The candles sputtered, and danced in tufts of blackness, mimicking the wild beating of Brown's heart. They were ensnared, not just by the conspiracies of men, but by remnants of a pain that reverberated across the sepulchral expanse of the attic. "You have to listen." Fenton's voice quaked with a mix of fear and command, gaining strength over the cacophony. As Fenton had warned, a figure, ethereal yet fearsome, staggered toward them from the shadows, hair dark and wild, eyes bright with fevered determination. "You will not take him," Lady Blackwood cried, the forcefulness behind her voice barely masking the tremor of desperation. "This is my reckoning." The sight of her, wild, torn, and fervent, was a reminder not only of the gravity of their plight, but of the revelations that had yet to surface. Each of them, it seemed, was bound by threads of sin and sorrow, lost in a tapestry woven by fate's cruel hand. "Lady Blackwood," Father Brown said, his voice firm, edged with a calm that starkly contrasted the tempest surrounding them. "You must step back. We need to think this through. We need the truth." But the shadows were unwilling to yield, cloaking reason in a shroud of urgency. Thompson's laugh reverberated throughout the scuffle as he cornered them, eyes gleaming with an unsettling light. He stepped free from the dimness, revealing a man turned grotesque by frenzy. "Ah, but what is truth when dressed in mourning? You stand surrounded by the guilty and the innocent, father, spurned desires, shattered lives." The die was cast the moment the first brush stroked canvas. His words danced on the cusp of madness as he drew closer, the unease palpable. Father Brown, pressing the back of his hand against the dampening brow of his brow, adjusted the dagger, its sharpness sharpened not by steel, but by the piercing revelations unfolding. The atmosphere thickened with tension as he considered Thompson, how the very act of revealing secrets was akin to exposing wounds, likely to end in an uprising of agony. "You've known all along, haven't you?" he murmured. "Your fixation isn't merely on justice. It's about unveiling the scabs of truth you once placed over your own sorrow." "Ha! You perceive so little, father. The artist's tragedy wove us into an intricate web, each stroke of her brush, a testament to betrayal. Do you feel the guilt saturate this attic? Like smoke in a tavern, it cannot help but cling." Thompson's raving faltered as cashmere clouds billowed past the window, a frail moment. Yet within that crack of time lay understanding, like a fleeting shard that solders shadows together. Realization poured over him like cold rain. "You did it," Father Brown pressed, lifting the dagger, though he wasn't sure if it was to protect himself or confront the man before him. "You murdered her to protect your own legacy, a legacy forged in lies, a portrait life cannot bear, can it? It was her blighted gift, Father. I couldn't let her unleash the truth upon our world, the truth that we, all of us, would rather suppress. Isn't that why we're here? To escape something darker?" Thompson spat, resembling an anguished artist confronting the very essence of his canvas. "But redemption isn't dawned on the shadows." Brown's voice rang with conviction. "Life is concentrated in its scars, not blotted out by illusion." The rattle of thunder intensified, shaking loose the very seams of their faith in justice. But amidst it all, a sudden hush fell, a pause pregnant with unsaid apologies. And then it happened. A fleeting motion caught the corner of Father Brown's eye, one that shattered the tension like glass. Lady Blackwood edged toward the candle, fingers trembling as if they were stars about to extinguish. "Stop!" Father Brown cried out, his heart racing in comprehension. "No!" But it was too late. Even she seemed lost, caught in the storm of her own tumultuous heart. As she flicked the candle, a tension across the room snapped, and darkness descended in a wave, mourning the flicker of light. It was all for him, she howled, a passionate cry birthed from the crescendos of their tormented souls. The scream unfurled, a chaotic hymn to the storm that echoed through their grief, a sound that sank into his chest like a lead weight. "Lady Blackwood, the letter in the floor," Fenton shouted, eyes wide with unrestrained horror. Through the tumult, Father Brown screamed as he lunged for the dagger, instinctively gearing for the worst, when a shot rang out, a blast that sent vibrations trembling through the very rafters of their sanctuary, echoing into their souls. The cacophony shattered around them. Was it fate that stood rebuked, or a phantom of compassion that had finally turned vengeful, seeking to carve justice? It was chaos personified, manifesting in mere breath that offered frail protection amidst the maelstrom singing of despair. Everything seemed enshrined within those endless seconds, each breath clenching with an unspoken understanding that whatever awaited them beyond that piercing darkness, it would alter their fates forever. Then, silence, wrapped tightly like a noose around their collective breath, each of them standing at the relentless edge of revelation, awaiting the verdict that would break forth through the relentless storm.